Yeah, check it, yeah. We in this together. A Spelmanite is a warrior fighting for justice. We can never be silent, so yeah, we causing a ruckus. Lift our voices up to bring injustice down. Speaking truth to power, we loving the sound. Undaunted by the fight, love is all we need. It's time to clear out the air so we all can breathe. Ain't no stopping us, we stick together. This bond is gonna last forever. Marching every day until we free, that's our buried treasure.
Hello everyone, my name's Alexandra Nelson. I'm a junior art history major and curatorial studies minor from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I am the head archivist for the Blue Record this year and also the director's intern.
Hi, my name is Chloe Catro. I'm a third year junior as well, art history major and curatorial studies minor from Prince George's County, Maryland, and I am an archivist for the Blue Record.
Hey everyone, my name is Gabrielle Cassell. I'm a first year comparative women's studies, religious studies double major, Spanish minor, and I'm really happy to be here as an archives intern for the Blue Record.
So guys, it is our first For the Record recording. How is everybody, not the first, but you know, the first in the new year.
Woo!
So how are you guys feeling? Are you excited?
Yeah, I'm very excited. I was listening to the Blue Record for a long time, so I'm just really excited to actually be recording with y'all.
Nice. Yeah, so how was everybody's winter break? How are classes going? Are you getting well adjusted after the break?
My break was pretty good. I wasn't as productive as I would have liked to be, but I know the semester's going to be busy, so I'm glad for the rest, but I'm really excited for my classes this semester.
Nice.
That's what break is for, Gabrielle.
Mm-hmm.
As you rightfully should. I support rest. My break was fine. Did some volunteer work. Other than that, rest as well. So yeah, I wish it was longer, to be honest. But it's okay. Classes are getting started. But yeah, it's sad. I hope it's a good semester. It's gonna be a good semester. Woo.
Yeah, I'm very excited to be back. I was abroad last semester, and so it's nice to be back and familiar. And my break was good, but I was ready to come back to Spelman because as much as I love my family, you know, I love my independence also.
Mm-hmm.
So you all saw, and I know, Gabrielle, you went to the convocation, but Spelman got a $100 million donation. Can you tell us about the convocation? Yeah, literally, woo! Yeah.
So first years had to go to the convocation. We were required to. We didn't know that that's what it was about. We just thought they were saying it was because we were celebrating 100 years of Spelman College being called Spelman College, because before it was called the Atlanta Female Baptist Seminary. So when we got there, it was there was a bunch of cameras and stuff like that. So it was like, what is going on here? And then one of the trustees on the board of trustees was like, oh, we're on CBS. Dr. Helene Gale is in New York right now because one of our trustees, Rhonda Stryker specifically, is donating $100 million to the school. So it was just a really big thing. 75 million of it is supposed to go to endowed scholarships for students to secure Spelman's future as well, and the other 25 is supposed to go to renovating dorms and stuff like that. So this is supposed to be a huge moment for Spelman as an institution. It's also the largest donation any HBCU has ever gotten, so it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I feel like when people were talking about convocation, people were like, oh, I heard Beyonce was supposed to come. I heard I think maybe it was Oprah.
Oprah? Yeah,
maybe it wasn't Beyonce.
Aye.
But yeah, I know there was a lot of discussion about the $100 million because people were talking about how Spelman is one of the most funded HBCUs, and that kind of leads us into our conversation today, we're going to be talking about the Spelman prototype. And so we're going to be talking about discussing the different types of Spelmanites throughout the years, how Spelman's been portrayed in the media, and Spelman throughout history, exploring that through the archives. So Spelman was created by two missionaries from New Salem, Massachusetts, Sophia B. Packard and Harriet E. Giles, and their mission was to educate African American women after slavery. Along with other Baptist women, Packard and Giles developed the Women's American Baptist Home Mission Society in 1877, which helped women missionaries seek education and bring Christianity to African American communities. In 1880, the society sent Packard on a trip to examine the living conditions of Black people in the South, and Packard and Giles later joined forces and were exposed to the way that Black people were living in the South. So among this post-slavery ruin plaguing Black people in the American South, both women identified education specifically for Black women as a remedy and a cure. And so upon their return, the two pushed to develop a school for women and girls, and they were initially met with a lot of pushback, but after donations and from different churches and organizations, they began planning a model school for women and girls. And they also developed the school in Georgia because the state had no laws preventing the education of Black women. So on April 11th, 1881, our Founders Day, with space in the basement of Friendship Baptist Church, gained by Pastor Frank Quarles, Packard and Giles opened the first Atlanta Baptist Female Seminary with 11 students, 10 women, some who were former slaves, and 1 girl.
Wow.
You know, I think that's an insane story for them to it's just an insane story for Spelman to come from that to this and
where we're at now.
Yeah. I don't know. I find that not hard to believe, but I'm just really fortunate that they had the forevision to create a school for Black women, and that was something that they valued.
And they were determined to, when asked, because the Atlanta Baptist Seminary, now known as Morehouse, it was in support of the Atlanta Female Baptist Seminary, Spelman now. But when asked to merge at some point, Sophia B. Packard and Harriet E. Giles were determined on keeping it separate because they saw the value in the education, or they saw the need to educate, just women, just keep it a historically women's institution. And they felt like if it was merged, it would focus more on men's education as opposed to women. So that's pretty special.
And I think with how the founding of Spelman kind of is going to tie into what we're talking about today, while what we have now is obviously a great thing, and Spelmanites have done amazing things in the world, we can also talk about how what Spelman was meant for in the first place was obviously, it was an altruistic thing, but obviously it was also influenced by, it was a missionary, it was a evangelical mission, and as well, and of course these were white women who founded the school, so there was a lack, even though there's still some racial dynamics at play as well. So I think all of this kind of leads us into where we're at now, with some remnants of that still remaining, and how people perceive Spelman and how Spelmanites are asked to perceive ourselves. So I think it's just, it can really tie into what we're talking about.
Also, side note, can you guys imagine if Spelman and Morehouse had merged?
That would be crazy.
I don't know, that just seems, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, I guess it would be, just...
What would they call it, Spell House?
Please!
No.
Yeah, let's...
No, I'm kidding.
That would be funny. What would it be called?
So, what do you guys think is the Spelman woman, or the Spelman prototype?
From how I've, from what I've observed and what I've heard, the Spelman woman is someone, she's always on, she's, has perfect grades, she's involved in a lot of different things, she takes a lot of leadership roles, she's assertive, and there's also like a certain type of like physical look that you're kind of expecting. It's not so much like how it was in the past where we saw there was some colorism at play and stuff like that, but it's more of like, you know, when we have events like business casual or formal business wear, like there's a certain way that you're expected to carry yourself to be the ideal Spelman woman.
I agree, Gabrielle. I do understand, first of all, the Spelman woman, you know, that the language has changed now, though it is a historically women's college. You know, not everyone, I think you mentioned it earlier, spoke about it earlier, or in past episodes, or in it's running thing that we all understand that not everybody who attends Spelman is identifies as a woman. But and we'll discuss that more later. But I have heard from my peers that in the context of this Spelman woman, because it's historically a women's college, that I have seen representations in her that, you know, the Spelman woman is all high heels and like walks around very very leadership oriented, very well rounded, even in the historical context, because there are quotes in the Spelman Messenger that we'll discuss later as well, about just being very involved in the community and extracurricular activities in addition to their academic endeavors. But those sentiments from my peers that I will never be the Spelman woman, like the high heel wearing and, you know, just
hair always done, like
yeah. And I do share those sentiments. I mean, like, okay, so I know for me that that's not true. I mean, I'm a Spelmanite because I'm a Spelman. I pay to go here. My parents pay for me to go here.
Literally.
Shout out to my parents. I love you so much. I attended this talk freshman year hosted by the National Council of Negro Women. Dr. Janetta B. Cole, former president of Spelman College, and she spoke at discussing what the Spelman woman is, Spelman student is, and she was basically like, a Spelmanite is whoever attends Spelman College. So she discussed like a Spelmanite is whoever, and she's not, and like just denounced those myths, because she had her tenure was for, or her presidency was for a decade. Yeah, so she's seen a lot. She's seen a lot in her time. So, but it was very, very wonderful hearing that from her. It was very inspiring and a hopeful message, and I really appreciate it. Yeah.
And I think that kind of like transitions into like how Spelman is portrayed in the media. Like when we were discussing earlier about the $100 million donation, there was some, if y'all know what the Shade Room is on Instagram.
Oh my God. Literally like the bane of my existence.
I have them blocked. I blocked them.
As you should, because they're so messy. But anyway, they have posted like, you know, they post all like the black news and stuff, so that was huge news in the black community. And if you scroll through the comments, you know, there were some people who were a bit, I wouldn't say angry, but they were like kind of disappointed that Spelman, you know, it has one of the largest endowments where HBCUs are concerned and often get, you know, large donations, that there's a lot of HBCUs that are on like the cusp of losing accreditation or closing because they don't get the kind of money that Spelman just got. And so while I definitely believe that's a valid argument,
For sure.
and other HBCUs definitely need more funding, I think it kind of ties into how people perceive Spelman to be and how Spelmanites are, that they think that we're all, you know, bougie, or we're all coming from affluent upper middle class backgrounds, when I like know for me personally, like I'm here on loans. I'm trying to, like, I'm coming from a working class, low income background. And I know I'm not the only one. There's a lot of students who are trying to figure out their financial situation from day to day or from semester to semester. So I think, and we see that a lot in different kinds of media portrayals of Spelmanites and just the general population outside of like the Spelman community, that they view Spelmanites in a particular way.
For sure. And like I've had conversations where people are like, where do you go to school? And it's like, I say Spelman, and they're like, oh. And it's just like they have a preconceived notion that like there's one type, that everybody behaves a certain way and like acts a certain way. And it's just like that. I just wish people really I wish they knew. And like I remember when I was thinking of coming to Spelman, I think I had those same stereotypes. Like my grandmother went here, but I always wanted to come here, but I definitely was like, oh, I'm not gonna fit in, like it's too bougie for me. Like I just didn't think I'd fit in. But I wish people knew, like, the Spelman student like is not homogeneous. Like there are so many different types of people, so many different types of economic backgrounds and social backgrounds. Like I don't know, it's just so varying. And I know and I don't want to be that person who brings up AI, but I know y'all have seen those AI pictures of those 3 little girls and their Spelman,
like,
their perfect slick bags. Like, it's just so funny to me. Like, and those are funny and like hee hee ha ha, but those are also like that's how people portray Spelman in media. Like 3.
Yeah. My dad sent me that picture. Yeah, and he was so proud. I was like, please, no.
No, like. My parents love those AI pictures. Like, they're just so funny.
That is actually hilarious as you bring that up.
Yeah.
Other representations in the media, and I do want to provide a trigger warning because I will be discussing drug addiction. So, in further discussion in Spelman's portrayal in the media, personally, I think I've seen overall Spelman/Spelmanites portrayed well in the media. I mean, that's just personally. However, I do acknowledge that there are images of Spelman out there that are not so favorable, depending who you ask. So, in the critically acclaimed television series Snowfall that ran from 2017 to 2013, the school made an interesting appearance, an interesting cameo. For those who may not be familiar, the show Snowfall detailed the life of Franklin Saint, a street entrepreneur, quote, turned drug lord in Los Angeles during the crack epidemic of the 1980s and early 90s. As the description suggests, Franklin gained wealth and power by exploiting his community via drug sales. At some point, his love interest, Melody Wright, played by actor Rain Edwards, became addicted to the drug crack. In the show, Melody was on track to attend Spelman. The writers had her to attend Spelman. She was spellbound after graduating high school. However, she became addicted to drugs. In the episode revealing her addiction, she and a neighborhood mate were seen getting high in a skating rink while she was wearing a Spelman sweatshirt. After their smoke sesh, the two got in a fight after Melody refuses to give the friend her necklace so the friend could purchase crack. Melody eventually finds the friend and knocks her out while carrying the bloodied up Spelman sweatshirt. After this came out, I don't think much of the Spelman community was pleased. I think there was most definitely a lot of pushback. And this wasn't the most sensitive way to showcase the school or perhaps a prospective student. However, I do, in the context of the epidemic, I do acknowledge the horrors it brought the community. But, that was a moment in Spelman history that was like, what? What's happening?
Talking, like, that's kind of crazy, but I think something's interesting about that because Spelman has a very curated image that they like to carry, and I can understand why people might be upset about that, but it's like, there's a chance that there are students on this campus who might be struggling with substance abuse. Like, that is, Spelmanites are not
Homogeneous.
yeah, we're not like excluded from struggling with issues that people in general struggle with. So it's kind of like this idea, and I feel like maybe the artistic choice was to clash like the very like picture perfect image of Spelman against something that we consider taboo, like drug addiction, even though we know that substance abuse is a mental disorder, and it's something that has a lot of other factors, that it's not just like a personal responsibility thing. So I think like that just leads into an interesting conversation on how Spelman expects us not to struggle with things like substance abuse or even with other kinds of mental disorders. So that's just a really interesting conversation.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I will say, I think Spelman's gotten better about like, I feel like there's things that used to be like swept under the rug, but I feel like they've been getting better with like, I get like 90 emails from the counseling center every day, and like I know there's resources available, and so I'm glad that like, I know, yeah, obviously people were not happy with how Spelman was portrayed in that, but I'm glad that it was brought to the surface, and like because people are struggling like with drug addiction, with mental health issues, with other things, and I don't think it's not productive or responsible as an institution to act like people aren't. Yeah,
I agree with that.
While watching that episode, it was so hard to watch Snowfall. It's just like a lot of stuff going on in this show, but I just wonder why they, I mean, because it could have been any school. It could have been, they could have had her going to any school, but just that like dream deferred, perhaps, and like how was that a reality for some people, and you don't want to, I don't know, bash others' reality.
So I'm sure all of you, if you go to Spelman, you've heard the tale that if you walk across, that water fountain in the oval that doesn't run anymore, it used to be said that if you take a drink from this fountain at the same time as a Morehouse man, that you guys will get together and stay happy forever. And obviously that fountain doesn't work, and so that is not true.
It's dry.
It is dry. I don't think water's come out of that for years.
To be honest, I thought the fountain, when I had seen it, I thought it was like supposed to be like a replica of like during segregation with the colored and white fountains. That's what I thought it was.
Oh my god.
There's a rich history of the fountain.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't know when I saw it at first.
Yeah, I don't blame you for thinking that. Like, I guess there's not really a reason you would know. But I just want to talk about like queerness at Spelman and how that definitely was not included within the Spelman prototype or within the image that people have within their heads.
Of what a Spelmanite is.
For sure. And so fall 2019 marked the beginning of admission of trans women into Spelman, and this was not a decision that was met without backlash. And in a 2018 interview with 11 Alive News, former student and Aphrodite president Amber Warren discussed the hate and threats she and her partner received, including a handwritten note by an anonymous sender describing disapproval of them being on campus. Warren explained that her thoughts about the new enrollment policy, describing it as reactionary instead of proactive.
And it's just crazy because, like, if you think about it, even from like a common sense point of view, if you, like, we're at a school, that's a historically women's college, and it's just, you would think, like, there's no chance that some of the students here are not queer. Like,
yeah, they were definitely, if they were queer, like, they were for sure closeted. They weren't it wasn't accepted.
And I think one time I was speaking to Dr. Beverly Guy Shefton, who's the director of the Women's Center, and she was telling me about one of their students who she was doing like an introduction or like a welcome back to parents or something like that, and she said something, I don't remember the full context, but basically what the issue was because she said, you know, your daughters, if they're like, whether they're with their boyfriend or their girlfriend, and when she said girlfriend, there was a lot of backlash because parents, you know, were like, no, we're not talking about no girlfriend, but it was just like,
Literally.
like
That's the reality.
It's exactly, it's a reality.
Not just on this campus, but everywhere. But go ahead.
I remember one time, I think it was like freshman year, Chloe, you know when we had to do those like, those public safety, like the public safety came to the stage?
Yeah.
I remember him saying like, oh, make sure you're not out with your little boyfriend, your boyfriend. I was like, okay. Like, I don't know, I just feel like it's so antiquated to assume that everybody who goes to a historically women's college is straight or like is not queer in any sense. And also that brings me into, it's so important to call Spelman a historically women's college versus an all-girls school, because first, I'm 20, like I'm not a girl.
That part.
Literally, like, also Spelman is diverse and has like untraditional students, like the Paulini Drake Scholars, and there's untraditional students at Spelman, and it's just, it doesn't, all girls school does not encompass what Spelman is, I don't think.
And there's also people who, you know, do not identify as women as
For
well,
sure.
who go here, and they're just as valid as Spelmanites.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So do you think that there is still this expectation for a Spelmanite to end up with a Morehouse student?
I think there definitely is. I don't think it's as strong as it may have been in the past, but still, like, with the tradition of, like, us always trying to do things together. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but there is definitely still this expectation of Spell House love.
Yes.
And it's just, and that's fine if that's how it ends up, but there shouldn't be this pressure for us to have to always feel like every interaction with Morehouse students has to be in a romantic context.
Literally, like a courting of sorts.
Yeah.
Literally, and trust me, don't get me wrong, I would love to have a Spell House love story, but it's been 3 years now.
Why would you love to have a Spell House love story?
I just think it's cute. Like, I don't know. I just think it's, like, it's kind of traditional, but I think it's just like a cute story. Like, oh, we met in college. I went to Spelman. He went to the Morehouse next door. Like, I don't know.
Okay.
Chloe's face.
No,
right now, like, I
no,
wish you
no,
guys
no.
could see it.
I don't know. That's an interesting point. But to answer the question about pressure to, you know, to date a Morehouse student, the pressure isn't here on campus because I don't feel it. I don't feel it on campus.
Yeah.
But outside of campus,
for sure.
I've definitely heard, you know, a couple older people has said that. Like, I remember I was helping out at my mom's school during winter break, and I told one of the substitute teachers where I went to school, and she was like, watch out because Spelman girls or Spelman women find their husbands at Morehouse. And I was like, whoops.
Literally, like, people, I feel like
though that's true. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I mean, it's happened before, but
sure.
like that's never been my focus.
Exactly. Literally, like, I don't think, at least I know for none of us, like, it's none of our focuses. Like, if it happens, okay, but it's just like,
Don't
the
go
older.
in.
You said what?
I said don't go in.
Yeah,
expecting.
do not go into college hoping to find your Morehouse man, because it will, I'm sorry, it might not happen. There's a high likelihood of not.
And you're here to, like, the reason why you're here at Spelman, you know, you're here to get your degree first and foremost, but you're also here to, like, build community. And I think, you know, there's, like, a strain of, like, misogyny in there that tells us that our focus as women has to be to find a man. And if that, there's no problem with getting into a romantic relationship, but you can be happy, you can make it through your Spelman years and be perfectly fine and at peace, because there's a lot of horror stories. You can be at peace without having to have a romantic relationship and just find other ways and other kinds of relationships to pour your time into.
For sure.
Well.
And before we move on from queerness at Spelman, I think it's so important to acknowledge Joe Russell, who was the first queer Miss Spelman, literally, inspired me to be part of the Blue Record podcast. I listened to her all my freshman year. Looked up to her. Very cool. But yeah, I just think it's important that we acknowledge her and how she was a host, and so amazing.
Yeah, queerness took the stage at Spelman, which is a beautiful thing to see. I think it's also important to acknowledge and put out there, though discussed in previous episodes of the Blue Record podcast, resources for queer students. I was talking to a friend, or shout out to all the people I've asked to give me some. I identify as heterosexual, so I wanted to say.
So funny, Chloe.
I needed like input. I couldn't do it by myself. I needed guidance. So shout out to all my friends who I asked, who are I asked to assist me with finding resources and getting more information about the resources on campus for queer students. One of them being Afrikiti.
So Afrikiti is, Spelman's LGBTQ plus organization. They're an organization under the Women's Research and Resource Center, which I would say on a whole is a very affirming and welcoming place for queer and trans students on campus. But Afrikiti especially does they do a lot of different kinds of events. They're one of the largest registered student organizations on campus, which truly goes to show that there's a lot of queer and trans students at Spelman who need that space, and that we're genuinely not a monolith, that there's people who are coming from different experiences. So that would be one of the best places for you to go if you're a queer or trans student at Spelman.
There's one last thing we wanted to talk about the Spelman prototype, and that was activism at Spelman. And I think as Spelman, we're really in the AUC, like we're in such a unique position regarding civil rights, like really at the heart of it. Martin Luther King went to Morehouse. I know y'all saw the memes on MLK Day.
Every year
it's like the Morehouse, they're like, I want, like, pay respects to my brother, like, best friend, I don't know.
I stayed in the same dorm, like, okay.
Literally, like, my brother would want me to rest, like, okay. Like, it's just funny.
But, talking about the activism at Spelman, which unfortunately is not something the institution itself really promotes to students. Like, there's a lot about the activist history at Spelman that incoming students don't even really learn about. But like we were just talking about, the civil rights movement was a really major time for Spelman students to get involved in activism. I'm currently taking Women in Social Resistance Movements with Dr. Bahati Kuumba, one of the professors and the associate director of the Women's Center. And we were talking about specifically the class of 1964, which as soon as they got to Spelman, they started getting really involved in the civil rights movement. They were doing sit-ins, they were doing protests. Like on September 28th, 1961, all drugstore eating establishments were desegregated, and that was thanks to Spelmanites and other AUC students doing sit-ins and demonstrations at those places. On February 28th, 1962, Spelman students joined a nationwide peace demonstration in Washington. In 1963, over 400 AUC students marched on the mayor's office to demand the dismantling of racial barriers. These were just like constant things, and even after the civil rights movement, you could see Spelmanites getting active. Like in 1970, like that was around like the Black Power movement with like the Black Panther Party. So Spelmanites were also involved in that, specifically the food programs that they had, which have pretty much been adopted into the low-income free food programs we see at schools today, which you wouldn't know, which they don't teach us in school, unfortunately. That was thanks to Black people and especially Black women. And one of the biggest things that Spelmanites did was in 1976, up to that point, Spelmanite had not had a Black woman as president. And so Spelmanites were ready for a black woman as president. So they actually locked in the Board of Trustees for around 26 hours in order to demand that they hear the request for a black woman president. Unfortunately, they still didn't listen at that point, and we had another black male president, Donald Stewart. But it was after his term that in 1987 we got Dr. Janetta B. Cole as our first black woman president. But overall, like, Spelmanites have always been socially active and politically active, even
For
when
sure.
the institution hasn't been super supportive of those activities. And we can also see that, and I'm glad to see that spirit kind of being revived today, like in the last couple of years, with things like the housing crisis and
Yeah.
the food crisis, which
Yeah.
I think you guys could talk more about because I wasn't here then.
Yeah. No, I think it's interesting. Like, Spelman as an institution, like, they condone activism, but when it doesn't paint them in a bad light. So I remember the housing crisis. Chloe, were you there? Like, the housing crisis of 2022?
Yeah, I was there. I remember waking up at like 6 a.m.
Yeah.
panicking.
Everybody-
my brother, my mom
Literally.
were on the computer trying to get.
We
were
woke
off.
up, everybody was like spread out across campus trying to figure out where the Wi-Fi would be the strongest, or like how to get housing, because the way Spelman was doing it was just not productive to its student body and its housing needs. And after everybody had woken up at 5:30, 6 a.m.,
Yeah.
nobody could get housing. And so people protested outside of Convocation.
Yeah, the flyer was. I mean, we got up at like at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
The flyer was made at 9 a.m.
Yeah,
Wow.
like people, it was quick and speedy, but I remember we were protesting outside of Convocation, and the dean of students, like, they were not happy. The
Yeah.
administration was not happy, and
At
then
all.
the news came. We were like walking around. Do you remember the news came?
Vaguely.
Yeah,
Vaguely.
and then like they just
Yeah, I
Spelman does
remember.
not like being portrayed in a negative light, even though it's like we are encouraged to be change makers. Like,
Right,
that's
a
literally
choice to change the
choice
world.
to change the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
And it's like we learned that in ADW, and like as black, like, they talk about this, like this is their spiel. But when it does come to protesting, like, they don't, there's like a level of complacency that we're expected to follow and
Right.
to adhere by. However, I feel like we don't really conform to that. Like, if something's wrong, we're going to speak out. And
Absolutely.
literally the old cat food.
Oh yeah.
Like, when I tell you guys, if you, like, Gabrielle, you have it so good.
I'm
Like,
grateful.
Yeah, like, I'm telling you, the cat food before, like,
Yeah.
I just,
It wasn't.
Couldn't
It wasn't.
eat, like-
yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't.
it wasn't good.
to our standards all the time.
They didn't have that, like, the vegetables scarce. You know how there's carrots in there? No, there was never
Like,
any.
I heard girls were just stopped eating in the cap,
Literally.
and like we're losing a lot of weight.
I
and
lost
stuff
8
like
pounds
that.
from my freshman year starting to fall break. Like,
And that's unacceptable
Yeah.
for a school of Spelman's stature and
for
capacity.
sure. Especially how
And
much paying in tuition.
Exactly how much
Oh,
we're
no.
paying to be here, for students to be worrying about basic needs. That's crazy. And of course, I'm grateful that some of those problems were resolved. Obviously, we're still in a housing crisis, actually, and like that's still a big concern for students. That year to year, am I going to be able to stay on campus? But at least with the food situation, and that was thanks to students' activism, that we were able to switch our caterer so that we can have better quality food.
Yeah, and then also just like people with dietary restrictions, like there was barely any options for vegan and vegetarian students, and I had a few friends who were vegetarian or like who had dietary restrictions, and they just didn't eat. Like, it was horrible. And I know myself, I spent so much money on Uber Eats like my freshman and sophomore year, an egregious amount. But what do you think about activism at Spelly and how it's changed throughout the years?
How it's changed, I've not necessarily changed. I mean, like, of course, with the incorporation of social media, that's another way to get the word across. Like, hey, in group chats, like, hey, we're out here, we're out in the streets, and to notify, politicians as well. or higher ups. I would also like to acknowledge Cop City in the Spelman's efforts and role, and I'd like to shout out the Spelman Social Justice Program, which, as we know, the Blue Record podcast is under.
Yes.
And everyone's work, graduated and current students' role in trying to stop Cop City, which is still an ongoing issue. So let's not forget it.
I remember last year, me and my friend went to the forum at Morehouse, and it was Andre Dickens, who's the mayor, and
Dr. Thomas,
who is Morehouse's president. And students were getting frustrated because they would ask questions and they weren't really receiving any answers from either of them. But I also think it's like people didn't understand this wasn't really Andre Dickens doing. Like, it was Keisha Lance Bottoms. This was signed into legislation before he came into office. But regardless of that, like, Morehouse, like, they just weren't getting any answers. And Morehouse was like, I think they were giving money to Cop City. Like, it just wasn't, people didn't understand why we were funding Atlanta APD, understandably, because I don't know how you guys feel, but like, I'm not in support of cops, like, especially like APD. Like, there's just a history of civil unrest and like police brutality and racial injustice. Like, it feels anti-black for a black institution to be funding cops. Like,
I definitely see your point and agree as well. With this, as we know, with this, this building of a police force in the forest.
Literally destroying nature too.
Destroying nature.
Which is one of the Weolani Forest is considered one of like the major lungs of Atlanta. Really? So destroying it will, and also like it's, like, of course this whole country is indigenous land, but like specifically, like, it's really sad to see that, because we know the people that are going to suffer the most from Cop City being built are black people.
Yes.
Like, this is a surveillance infrastructure.
Exactly.
It leads to more surveillance in the West End area, in this, the area that it's being built in, and the residents are mostly black
and
here.
Low income.
So what are you gonna do?
Right.
Like it's scary.
And
it's scary. I just wanted to do a little throwback again. I just wanted to really acknowledge Ruby Doris Smith. She was a part of the Atlanta student movement. She was a Spelman student, and she was very much so the backbone of a lot of the organized movements led by the Atlanta student movement. Or Miss Ruby died at a very young age due to cancer, but I'm just acknowledging her wonderful work with the Atlanta student movement.
And to wrap up talking about activism today, obviously, if you don't know what's going on in Palestine right now with, we're seeing a humanitarian crisis.
You should know what's going on in Palestine right now.
We're seeing the beginnings, we're in the midst of the beginnings of what is a genocide, basically. I'm actually part of Students for Justice in Palestine, which is another organization under the Women's Center. And students, we're currently trying to figure out how we can get more active where that's concerned, because Palestinian issues are also extremely intertwined with Black issues in the United States, especially where we were just talking about Cop City. The Atlanta Police Department and the police force was trained by Israeli Defense Force soldiers. They did something called, they did like trading exchanges through GILI, which is a program at Georgia State University, which is like where police from different countries can train each other to basically be able to be more brutal towards their marginalized populations, which is Black people here and Palestinians over there. And so I'm interested to see how Spelman is going to react, and the AUC in general react to students' activism in the Palestinian Liberation Solidarity Movement, because students really do care about this issue, but unfortunately our schools do have a history of not being extremely supportive when these kind of things happen. So that'll be something to wait and see how things continue from here on out.
Yeah, and thank you, Gabrielle, for that. And if you don't know what's going on, please read about it and don't be complacent in this. Like, I just think
this genocide,
literally, and like we're actively witnessing this. It's not like there's not resources, and like it has a very long history, but like boycott, like just educate yourself. Like it's imperative that you're not complacent in this, because imagine, and I'm curious, like in 50 years how people are going to talk about this, like. And I've been seeing this stuff on the internet. It's like people are gonna lie about what side they're on, and yeah,
be on the right side, be on the correct side, the side against
the side of justice.
Yeah.
Side of justice.
Let's boycott Starbucks in Lower Manly. I know you need your coffee, but B Cafe is right by Intra. Morehouse has Brewed Awakenings, which I heard their matcha's pretty good.
I also wanted to mention that there's also genocides that are happening concurrently, especially on the continent of Africa, in Sudan and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And as people of African descent, we should be extremely concerned with what happens across the African diaspora.
And to end our episode on a lighter note, we just wanted to talk about the Spelman prototype throughout the early 2000s and even today. In a quote used to describe the class of 2010, Spelmanites were described as trendy, ever-evolving, and always rocking the new. What do you guys think about that? That's kind of cute. Like, that makes me wish I went to Spelman in 2010.
It is cute.
Yeah.
I think now we're on like to your point about 2000s, I think we're on a 2000s wave now.
Yeah.
Before it was the 90s, now it's 2000s.
Yeah, everyone loves Y2K.
Yeah, literally. And me included.
I believe absolutely like the fashion trending like in 2003 is making a comeback. Like I've seen rock some, you Alex, I've seen
oh my
rock
god. This
some early 2000s fits. I'm just loving the style. I do think there are a lot of fashionable folks. Not saying that everybody dresses up every day, but
yeah, let's not that stereotype. But we were looking at this the Blueprint, which is Spelman's publication, their newspaper, which one of our archivists, actually Blair Martin, is on. Which I'm really glad is making a comeback.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to what they're gonna do.
For sure. So shout out Blair, shout out the Blueprint. But I really liked this newspaper because it just shows the different type of people at Spelman. Like they're talking about Greek life. They're talking about the Maroon Tiger has a body issue review. They're honoring professors. Like there's an article on Halloween used as an excuse for insensitivity. Like they're talking about like the Philippines, and there was this really strong typhoon. So I just think that like I'm really glad. They also talk about like culturally speaking eating disorders in the Black community, which is something like I don't believe would have been talked at Spelman in maybe in the 90s, but like before that, like taboo. So I'm just really glad that they're highlighting this. I feel like this newspaper gives Spelmanites of all different backgrounds an opportunity to like write what they're passionate about, and so very glad that we had this, or that people had this.
Very well-rounded students are at Spelman.
Yes.
And when I was doing research for this episode, I was looking through what it used to be called the Spotlight, and now it's the Blueprint.
Mhm.
And it was definitely interesting to see all different types of students talking about different things. You had students who were more radical,
Mhm.
and you had students who were a bit more conservative. You had students who were interested in the arts, interested in the sciences. Like, we got to see, like, we're talking about the Spelman prototype, we were getting to see all the different types of Spelmanites. And so I'm glad that we have the Blueprint and what used to be the Spotlight as a platform for students to speak their minds, and without as much censorship as maybe the institution sometimes tries to do.
For sure. And this is so insane. Like, I'm looking at the newspaper now, and there's literally an article on the Spelman brand, and it's talking about how we are a community of the intelligent and sophisticated Black women, like, period. And it talks about, like, the Spelman woman is presumed to be heterosexual, which leads to the idealized and often romanticized Spell House couple. Yeah, so I think it's really cool that they were talking about that in 2013. Yeah, and, like,
Who's the article by?
it's by Sarah Brokenborough.
Class of 2016.
Yeah, class of 2016.
Shout out Sarah.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much.
But yeah, do you guys have anything to add? Or
I just think this was a really interesting episode topic in general, because I know personally for me, like, I don't feel like I fit like the stereotypical idea of what a Spelman woman is, but I don't think we all do completely, because we're whole human beings. You know, there's, even if we dress a certain way, like, that might be more in line with that, there's other things that we have that might not fall into that. And like you said earlier, Chloe, when you were quoting Dr. Cole, that the Spelman woman, the Spelmanite, if you go to Spelman, you're a Spelmanite. Period. Like, there's no other requirements. You're worthy to be here because you are here, and there's nothing you have to do, no hairstyles you have to wear, no specific clothes you have to dress in for you to be an ideal Spelmanite, because you already are.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, Gabrielle. And to your point a second ago, Alexandra talking about the Spelman brand article by Sarah Brokenborough. She ends her piece, or they end their piece with, we all know what it means to go to Spelman. We know the opportunity Spelman creates for us. However, I believe that you are a representative of yourself first and your institution second.
Please remember that, or else Spelman will, like, I don't want to say beat you, but you'll just get discouraged. Like, please remember, you are yourself first. You represent Spelman second.
Exactly.
Please.
Put you first, Lucius. Put you first.
Okay, well, thank you guys.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, me
Thank
too.
you.
And
so much.
we hope you guys have a great spring semester. Thank you for listening to the first For the Record podcast. That was recorded in person this year, and also for this year.
Yay.
Okay.
We'll be back.
See y'all.
Bye.